The air hung thick with the scent of incense and river mud, the Euphrates lapping at the city walls like a serpent tasting the night. Torches flickered along the ziggurat steps, casting shadows that danced like condemned souls. You stand there, in the shadowed cloister of the Esagila, heart pounding against the linen of your robe, as the high priest's voice echoes through the marble hall. The king commands it, he whispers, his breath hot with myrrh. The virgins must prepare for the rite. 12,000 of you, chosen from the provinces, gathered in this sacred cage, your heads shaved, your bodies anointed with oil that gleams like liquid gold under the moon. The drums begin, low and insistent, vibrating through the stone floor into your bones. And then, the gates creak open, not to the god's embrace, but to soldiers' boots, muddied from the dried riverbed. Cyrus has come, but not as conqueror, as judge. This tale you're about to hear involves rituals of the body, forced devotions that blurred the line between worship and violation. These events draw from ancient accounts, but they cut deep into the human spirit. If the weight feels too heavy, pause here. For those who stay, we unravel not the spectacle of pain, but the machinery that built it and the man who dared to dismantle it. Imagine a world where gods demanded flesh as tribute, where the cradle of civilization hid its cruelties behind towering temples. This wasn't chaos. This was Babylon at its zenith, a machine oiled by fear and faith, churning out obedience from the Fertile Crescent to the distant hills. In 539 BC, Cyrus the Great, king of Persia, didn't storm the gates with fire and sword. He slipped in like a shadow, diverting the Euphrates to knee-deep shallows, his army waiting silent as ghosts. The city fell not in screams, but in whispers of welcome from priests, weary of their own king's madness. Nabonidus, the last Chaldean ruler, had turned piety into paranoia, neglecting Marduk's grand temple while exalting the moon god's sin in distant oases. Temples crumbled, exiles multiplied, and in the heart of it all, the sacred women bound to Ishtar's altar bore the empire's unspoken burdens. This wasn't mere conquest. This was a reckoning with the divine machine that fed on innocence. And it echoes today in every system that cloaks control and holiness, reminding us that true power liberates, not enslaves. Long before the Persian banners crested the horizon, Babylon stood as the axis of the world, a glittering jewel on the Euphrates where law and legend intertwined. Founded in the shadow of Sumer's fall, it swelled under Hammurabi's code into a metropolis of hanging gardens and hanging judgments, its walls thick enough to mock the gods themselves. By the 6th century BC, under Nebuchadnezzar, it had swallowed kingdoms like Judah, deporting tens of thousands to labor in its brickyards, their tears mixing with the mortar. The empire stretched from the Mediterranean's edge to the Zagros Mountains, a bureaucracy of scribes tallying tribute in clay tablets, priests divining futures from sheep livers, and soldiers patrolling trade routes heavy with lapis and cedar. But beneath the splendor lurked a tension, a fault line running through the very altars. The temples weren't just houses of prayer. They were the empire's beating heart, where wealth flowed and loyalty was forged in ritual fire. Nabonidus, crowned in 556 BC, inherited this colossus but twisted it. A king more scholar than warrior, he dreamed of antiquity, excavating forgotten shrines while his capital starved for neglect. He abandoned Babylon for years, ruling from the Arabian desert, where he built palaces to Sin, the moon's pale sovereign. Back home, Marduk's priests seethed, their coffers empty, their festivals skipped. The people whispered of omens, eclipses, locusts, the river running red with silt. Nabonidus responded with fervor gone awry, centralizing worship, hauling idols from provincial temples to Babylon's vaults like hostages. And in Ishtar's domain, the goddess of love and war, the rituals intensified. Every year, thousands of young women, plucked from villages as tribute, entered the temple cloisters. They were the Lilitu, the sacred servants, sworn to chastity yet bound to the goddess's whims. Historians estimate their numbers in the thousands, perhaps 12,000 across the realm, at peak fed on barley and dates, their labor weaving linens for the gods, their bodies a currency for divine favor. But whispers spoke of darker demands, nights when the veil between worship and violation thinned, when foreign merchants tossed silver at the altar for a blessing that left scars on the soul. Cyrus wasn't born to topple such a beast. Born around 600 BC in Anshan, a dusty Persian outpost, he grew as a shepherd's son under Median overlords, learning the bow and the lie at his grandfather Astyages' court. Legend painted him exposed at birth, saved by a herdsman, a tale Herodotus spun to hint at destiny's hand. But the real forge was exile and ambition. Astyages, fearing prophecy, plotted to kill the boy. Instead, Cyrus fled, rallying Persian tribes with promises of land and glory. By 550 BC, he toppled his grandfather, fusing Medes and Persians into a hybrid force, lions on leopard skins, tolerant of gods yet ruthless in war. Lydia fell next, its gold mines fueling the machine. Croesus captured but spared, his wealth redistributed to loyal satraps. Cyrus learned mercy as strategy: execute the king, but court the priests. It was psychological warfare, dressing conquest in benevolence, turning enemies into allies before the first arrow flew. Yet trauma etched him deep. As a youth, he'd seen Median raids raze villages, women dragged to tents as spoils, their cries swallowed by steppe winds. One night, in a Median camp, a Persian girl barely flowered resisted a noble's grasp, her knife finding his throat before guards silenced her. Cyrus, chained nearby as hostage, watched her body swing from a gibbet at dawn, a warning to the conquered. That image burned. Power as defilement, gods invoked to justify the blade. It crystallized in him a creed not Zoroaster's fire alone, but a king's code. Rule by justice, not lust. Honor the local flame, but quench the empire's fever. When scouts brought word of Babylon's fractures, Nabonidus' absences, priestly plots, Cyrus saw not just land, but a chance to unmake the machine. The gods call us, he told his generals, eyes fixed on the horizon. And then, the turning point. A defector's scroll arrived, from Ugbaru, Babylonian governor of Gitium, detailing the temple's rot. The virgins weep in Ishtar's name, it read. Cyrus unrolled it by lamplight, fist clenching the edge. The machine would break. Not with blood, but with the river's own cunning. The autumn sun baked the plains north of Babylon, turning stubble to gold dust that clung to Persian greaves like regret. It was early October 539 BC, the air heavy with the tang of overripe dates and distant forges. Cyrus's host 50,000 foot, 10,000 horse encamped at Opus, the Tigris's bend, where reeds whispered secrets to the wind. Scouts reported the city's pulse, markets bustling with Median silks, ziggurats piercing the sky like fingers accusing the gods. Inside Esagila, the grand temple rose in 7 tiers, its blue-glazed bricks catching light like a captive sea. Lilitu, 19 summers old, knelt in the third cloister, her fingers tracing Ishtar's star-etched floor. Daughter of a Nippur potter, she'd been tithed at 12, her family's debt to the goddess paid in her youth. Tall and olive-skinned, with eyes like polished onyx, she moved through days of ritual, grinding incense, chanting hymns that praised the Queen of Heaven for battles won and lovers bound. The other virgins, sisters in white linen, heads bound in cords of red wool, mirrored her, their laughter rare but fierce, stolen in shadowed alcoves over shared sips of date wine. Lilitu dreamed of clay wheels and her father's rough hands, of festivals where flutes called rain. But the temple's rhythm was relentless, a drumbeat of devotion laced with dread. Nabonidus' edicts had tightened the noose. More virgins summoned from the provinces, their numbers swelling to 12,000 empire-wide, guardians of Ishtar's flame. The goddess demands purity, the high priest intoned at dawn assemblies, his voice a rasp of authority. Purity meant isolation, no suitors, no mirrors, only the goddess's gaze. Yet rumors slithered through the cloisters, nights when the veil lifted, when blessings came in the form of veiled men, silver exchanged for moments that left the air fouled. Lilitu had seen it once. A girl from Uruk returned, hollow-eyed, her chants faltering like a broken reed. "It's the machine," the girl whispered before silence claimed her. Lilitu clung to her loom then, weaving tapestries of lions and stars, threads of hope against the warp of fate. She cared for the others as elder sister, braiding hair with jasmine, telling tales of Persian winds that carried freedom's scent. They listened, wide-eyed, to her stories of hills, where women chose their paths, not altars. That evening, as equinox shadows stretched long, the high priest summoned Lilitu to the inner sanctum. The air thickened with cedar smoke, braziers flickering like wary eyes. "The king returns from Tama," he said, his fingers drumming a tablet's edge. Sin's light wanes, Marduk stirs unrest. The goddess requires a deeper offering. Lilitu's stomach knotted, the words hanging like a noose. The demand was clear. Select 10 virgins for the union rite, a shadowed ceremony where Ishtar's favor was bartered to appease the throne. Refusal meant exile for families, lashes for the cloister. Lilitu met his gaze, voice steady as river stone. The goddess chooses the pure of heart, not the coerced. The priest's laugh was dry chaff. "Hearts bend to crowns, child. Prepare, or the machine grinds all." Tension coiled in the hall, guards shifting at bronze doors. The distant Euphrates murmuring dissent. Lilitu bowed, retreating to the cloisters, her mind racing like a hare in torchlight. Whispers spread among the sisters' resistance, a hidden path through the reed gates. But the night deepened, drums calling, and the rite's shadow loomed. As stars wheeled overhead, the act unfolded, not in blood, but in the hush of implication. Lilitu led the chosen to the veiled chamber, oil lamps casting grotesque shapes on lapis walls. The men entered cloaked nobles, faces masked as lions, their coins clinking like judgments on altars. The virgins stood, robes slipping like fallen leaves, the air electric with unspoken pleas. No screams pierced the night, only the goddess's name, chanted as armor. Lilitu watched from the threshold, her refusal a silent vow, slipping away to the outer court where reeds bent to the river's breath. Hours passed, the moon climbing, until dawn's first blush painted the ziggurat rose. The girls emerged, veils drawn tight, eyes averted but unbroken. Word trickled to the cloisters, a messenger from Opus, Persian banners sighted, Nabonidus fleeing south. The priests huddled, tablets scattering like frightened birds. This wasn't vengeance on one soul. This was the system's fracture, the rite's machinery exposed as rusting gears. In distant villages, mothers wept not for daughters lost, but for the empire's grip loosening. And in modern boardrooms, where power trades virtue for profit, we see the echo. Rituals rebranded as incentives, innocence commodified under fluorescent lights. But the machine didn't halt at Esagila's gates. From Ugbaru's vantage, high in Gudium's hills, the empire's veins pulsed visible. A Babylonian noble turned satrap, his loyalty bought with Persian gold and a grudge against Nabonidus's whims. Ugbaru watched the tribute caravans snake south, laden with temple silver meant for Sin's desert shrines. The priests report to scribes to the crown, he murmured to his aides one dusk. Map unrolled on a leopard skin, cut the flow, and the heart starves. Cyrus's orders were precise: infiltrate the priesthood, amplify their grievances, promise restoration. Ugbaru, broad-shouldered with a scar from Median wars, moved like smoke through Babylon's alleys, meeting whispers in tavern shadows. The virgin's burden ends with Marduk's favor, he told a cloistered elder, slipping a scroll of Cyrus's creed justice for all faiths. The escalation spread like dry grass fire. Provincial temples rebelled, withholding grain. Soldiers at Opus mutinied, their spears turned inward. Numbers swelled not in death tolls, but in defections. Whole garrisons marching under Persian banners, their captains swayed by tales of spared cities. In the cloisters, the shift came through Lilitu's ears. A servant girl, eyes wide with hill winds, brought word from the docks. Persian engineers damming the Euphrates, water levels dropping like a god's wrath. "They come not to burn, but to bind wounds," she said, voice trembling with hope. Lilitu gathered the sisters in the reed garden, a breather amid the tension, a patch of green where jasmine bloomed defiant, mocking the stone's severity. They sat cross-legged, sharing flatbreads crisp with sesame, laughter bubbling soft as they mimicked priests' pomposity. "If Ishtar favors lovers, why chain her handmaids?" one quipped, and the circle rippled with mirth, a dark contrast to the rite's shadow. But the machinery ground on. Nabonidus's son, Belshazzar, regent in the capital, doubled the cloister guards, his feasts echoing with looted chalices from Jerusalem's fall. Ugbaru witnessed one such night from a balcony, the palace aglow with torches, concubines dancing like flames. A virgin from the outer provinces, no older than Lilitu, was paraded as gift to Sin, her eyes dull as spent coals. The act was swift, implied in the guards' leers. the morning's hushed removal. Ugbaru turned away, bile rising, his report to Cyrus urgent. The system devours its own to feed the throne. Whole villages emptied of their daughters, sent to altars as offerings, the empires reach a web of coerced piety. Yet, in that reed garden, Lilitu found irony, a sparrow nesting in Ishtar's statue crack, beauty cracking horror's shell. The climax broke, not in thunder, but in the river's sigh. October 12, 539 BC. The moon full and mocking, Cyrus's vanguard, Ugbaru's Gideons at lead waded the shallows, water whispering to their ankles. Babylon slept, Belshazzar's revels drowning in wine. Unaware the gates swung inward like a lover's arms. Lilitu, roused by distant splashes, climbed the ziggurat's flank, sisters trailing like ghosts. From the summit, the city sprawled. Processional way lined with lions, the Ishtar gates' blue tiles gleaming under torchlight. Persian standards rose at the bridges, no clash of bronze, only murmurs of accord. Ugbaru entered the palace first, sword sheathed, confronting Belshazzar amid his goblets. "The throne yields to Marduk's chosen," he declared, voice steady as granite. The regent rose, face flushed, but priests flanked the hall, their nods the true betrayal. Time stretched, each heartbeat a drum's echo, the air thick with spikenard and sweat. Belshazzar lunged, a chalice hurled, shattering like prophecy, but Ugbaru's men closed gentle ranks, escorting him to shadowed cells. No blood stained the tiles, only the system's crack, widening. Lilitu descended as dawn broke, the cloisters stirring with cries of confusion. Cyrus himself appeared at Esagila's steps, unhelmed, his cloak dust streaked from the march. Tall, bearded, eyes sharp as flint, he raised hands calloused from bowstring, proclaiming in Akkadian laced with Persian cadence, "Marduk has called me to free his city." The virgins gathered, veils clutched like shields, Lilitu at front, her defiance a quiet flame. "The rites end," Cyrus said, voice carrying like wind through reeds. "No more chains in the goddess's name." The implication hung, thousands released, their cloisters emptied, families reunited across the realm. But the break came deeper in Lilitu, who stepped forward, voice clear. "What of Ishtar's honor?" Cyrus met her gaze, a flicker of the camp's long-ago girl in his eyes. Honor freely given, not taken. The machine shattered there, gears of coercion grinding to halt, priests nodding as scrolls unrolled decrees, restoring shrines, exiles summoned home. Ugbaru watched from the throng, his scar twitching in smile. The overreach of Nabonidus had birthed this mercy. The system didn't fall with a roar, but a sigh, 12,000 lives reclaimed, the empire's shadow lifting like mist at noon. Nabonidus fled to Carmania, dying in obscurity, his moon dreams dust. Belshazzar perished quietly, his feast a footnote in clay. Cyrus ruled Babylon a decade more, his cylinder buried in Esagila's foundations, a testament etched in cuneiform, king of the world, restorer of peace. The virgins scattered Lilitu to Nippur, weaving not linens but tales for her daughters, her refusal a seed of quiet rebellion. Ugbaru became satrap, his Gideon hills blooming under Persian till. Power shifted east, the Achaemenid web spanning from Indus sands to Aegean waves, tolerant edicts binding diverse gods in fragile harmony. Long-term scars lingered, temples rebuilt, but rituals reformed, the old coercions whispered as cautionary shadows. Ironically, the cylinder meant to exalt Marduk became Cyrus's charter, unearthed centuries later to crown him father of human rights. The machine's condemnations twisted into liberation's blueprint. Centuries slumbered over Babylon's ruins, the Euphrates shifting course like a guilty river, burying Esagila under silt and forgetfulness. Then, in 1879, Hormuzd Rassam, a Syrian explorer for the British Museum, thrust a spade into a mound near the processional way. Dust choked the air, workers coughing as bricks tumbled, revealing a fractured clay barrel, 45 lines of wedge script glinting in lantern light. Rassam, sweat-streaked and triumphant, cradled it like a lost child, Marduk's voice, praising Cyrus as chosen savior, temples restored, exiles freed. Translated by Rawlinson's successors, it proved the conqueror's mercy, not myth. But deeper digs whispered of the cloisters. tablet fragments listing Naditu names, tallies of offerings that hinted at the virgin's toll. A seal from Ishtar's shrine, depicting a woman unbound, surfaced in 1,922 excavations, her pose defiant amid lions. These tangible echoes, clay unyielding as bone, humanize the machine. Rassams find a bridge from silt to scrutiny. Why does this matter now? In echo chambers of modern faiths, where devotion twists into demand, Cyrus's river divert stands as blueprint. Infiltrate the system, not destroy the faithful. Power's true atrocity isn't the blade, but the altar that dulls it. Resistance blooms in refusal, like Lilitu's gaze, a universal spark against the grind. We learn human nature bends, but doesn't break unless mercy wades the shallows first. Return to that shadowed cloister, drums faded, river full again. Lilitu stands free, jasmine in her hair, the ziggurat's shadow soft as memory. What changed? The machine rusted, its victims named in wind and word. The virgins were meant to vanish into rites silence, but they endured in tablets, in seals, in the cylinder's unyielding script, and now they're with you, because you listened to the end. If this story stirred something ancient in you, drop a comment below. What machine in your world needs Cyrus's river? Subscribe for more hidden threads of history that refuse to stay buried. The past whispers, will you wade in?